This video is about corporate America's latest major power grab, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement, sometimes called the TPP. The TPP is an international pact currently under negotiation between the United States and countries throughout the Pacific Rim. It is intended to set the norms for free trade and investment globally. Free trade sounds like a good thing, but what it means in the TPP is giving big corporations the power to shift jobs around the world to wherever workers are the most exploited and environmental regulations are the weakest. Often that means having free trade with countries where people are denied their basic freedoms and are put in jail or shot simply for speaking out in favor of better working conditions. You may have heard about China's high-tech sweatshops, where young people work for long hours for low pay, often living in cramped dormitories hundreds of miles away from their families. Conditions are so bad, one of the biggest companies decided to install nets outside its dorms to prevent workers from jumping out the window and committing suicide. One of the reasons corporations want the TPP is because they feel that Chinese sweatshop workers are paid too well, and they're seeking out lower cost labor in countries like Vietnam. If the TPP is enacted, it will accelerate what's been called the global race to the bottom. Good-paying jobs will continue to leave the United States in favor of lower and lower paid countries, and there will be a huge downward pressure on wages and benefits on jobs throughout the world. That alone puts a lot of power in corporations' hands. But what else do corporations want with the TPP? The pharmaceutical giants want to use the TPP to extend the length of their drug patents, increasing healthcare costs in the United States and denying people in developing countries access to life-saving medications. Extractive industries want to increase offshore drilling, open pit mining, and clear cutting in some of the most pristine and biodiverse ecosystems left on Earth. By reducing tariffs, quotas, and other barriers to rip and ship exporting, the TPP will help them to do so. Wall Street banks, insurance companies, and hedge funds want to use the TPP to block the implementation of common sense financial reforms designed to regulate against too big to fail and toxic derivatives. Big Ag wants to use the TPP to consolidate global food supplies into the hands of fewer and fewer corporate middlemen, a practice that pushes family farmers off their land and leads to wild food price fluctuations for consumers. And a wide range of transnational corporations have been pushing for the TPP to include so-called investor state provisions that would allow them special powers to sue governments in international tribunals for enacting virtually any new public interest policy that affects their expectation of profits. Investor state puts climate change regulations, food safety protections, financial reform, and a host of other democratic policies on the chopping block. U.S. trade negotiators are pushing to complete the TPP this year, and they're trying to keep it under the radar. The best way to stop the TPP is to drag it into the light of day. Right now, negotiators have appointed approximately 600 corporate lobbyists to serve as cleared advisors on the TPP, while refusing to release any of their negotiating proposals for public review. Please visit the website citizenstrade.org to sign a petition demanding that negotiators release their TPP proposals for public scrutiny. Please also share this video with your friends. The corporate media is unlikely to inform the public about the TPP. We need to do it ourselves.